Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Warriors Season 2, Episode 6. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This episode was very reminiscent of the episode 5 from last season, kind of being this bottle episode. It kind of takes place in this one single location, kind of following one storyline all the way through. So, Hong... Young June all go with Assam and Vega to this place. It's like this guy, this Rooker guy, because he's in this border town that he ends up owning everyone, the people, the location, even the cops there, the officers there all work for him. So they have to come here to sign up for the tournament, but there's no weapons inside, which Assam never brings any weapons. Only weapons he ever kept on him was like any hatchet stuff, just as a, byproduct of being a hatchet man for the, hop way. But I love that young June didn't want to give up his blade. He's like, I'll find a way to sneak him in. The guy in front of him gets killed, and he hands his blades over, and he's just like, don't say anything. It didn't even cross my mind that Hong, to be fair, we cut to the credits, but Hong never gave over his weapons. To be fair, it makes sense, because most people, they'll see that, they'll just look at it like beads, and so it comes in handy later on that he didn't get rid of them. I even love the conversation they had where it's like, oh yeah, women do absolutely nothing for you. He's like, no. It's like, what about men? He's like, yeah. So you were like me. He's like, certain men. He's like, well, what about me? It's like, no, you're not my type. And he's like, why not? Young Jun got super offended. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I not your type or something like that? You could tell something definitely was up the moment they got to this town, because Vega kind of goes off on her own, does her own thing, because even the Psalms later on, like, oh, do you want some company? She's like, nah, I'm good. I'm just like, it felt like she was setting something up, but I was like, she went through the trouble of bringing Assam here, so why would she be setting him up? Because I was like, there's no way she's betting against him, because she had said that previously, like, oh, because you're winning so much, do you want to take a fall? But she knows Assam would never take a fall in the fight that already came up previously, so I'm like, I don't see her doing that here, so I'm like, what is she up to? So we kind of find out later on, but really quickly, the moment Assam ran into that dude at the beginning, I was like, is that fucking Michael Bisping? Super was, which makes me wonder the other people that participated in the tournament were at least like some of them, because some of them didn't have dialogue, so I'm wondering if some of them were just like actual real life fighters. It just, Michael Bisping being there and everything made me go like, oh, it seems like that's probably like, if he's there and some of the other people participating, like they focus on, obviously it's an action-y show, so of course they're going to focus on like a fight tournament, but it felt like, especially because they didn't have any dialogue, that they probably were real fighters. Especially the one dude with all the kicking. I was like, yo, that reminded me of like, what's Eddie's last name? Is it Gordo? From Tekken. I'm not the most well-versed in Tekken and Tekken lore, but it's like, I know Eddie's like, yo, the spinny kick dude, so it's like, I was like, yo, because it is a very specific martial art, or at least a fighting style. I just don't remember what it is. I don't think it's, I was about to say, I was like, no, I don't think it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or something. I don't think that's it. But I was like, I don't know what that fighting style is, but it immediately made me go like, oh yeah, Eddie. So I thought that was interesting. And I love that he's like, oh, you're dead, which sounds like, dude, I've heard that quite a lot, He has heard it quite a lot, and despite it all, he's still standing, so I think that speaks volumes. So I was like, okay. I actually thought when they fought later on, it was going to be a bigger, like, more drawn-out thing, but to be fair, Vega's like, yeah, he's super strong, so end this quickly, before he kills you, because, yeah, strength is his advantage. It's almost like, I'm sure he could definitely give a Leary run for his money. But I love Assam ended that fight with a single kick. I was like, Jesus. He's like, finish. I was like, hey, yo, that was pretty good. But every fight, Vega's giving him some tips about the fights, but he's also studying the fighters too to kind of how to best handle each and every one of them. So, I guess those were the only real I'm curious who else would have been the future competition, because the last guy he knocked out not unless he technically did win the tournament. There was no ceremony to it. Just like Rooker was like, hey, I want you to come here and you and Vega to have dinner with me and my wife. That's why I was like, I don't think that was the end of the tournament. I think there was still more. Because even Vega was like, oh yeah, you're done for today. So it makes me go like, okay, so I'm wondering what the rest of the tournament would have been like. Sadly, we won't get to see it. So, very short tournament arc. I figured this wouldn't be more than one episode anyway. But when she was like, oh, you're not fighting today, I was like, oh, I wonder, is this going to be a multiple episode thing? It's like, no, he obviously got into the ring this episode, but still. I do appreciate that when Vega and Assam went off, like Hong was like looking and he saw like, all right, these people have an eye on them. So without telling Assam, without even letting young June know, he went and like had their backs. It's just like, oh, I can. It's like, once again, I feel like you have your ulterior motives, but you come in clutch when the time comes. Hong, which I think is so dope. But it's like, yeah, he didn't make a point of it. He's just like, yeah, I stepped out. The wine didn't sit well with me, and let young June kind of have his fun. He's like, oh, how long you need? 10 minutes. He's like, fuck you, you know. And then like afterwards, he kicks up his feet because he talked about the boots, which they had talked about earlier, and they were like, oh yeah, they're ugly as hell. And he's like, yeah, I want a pair, and he ended up getting them. So it was a win-win all across the board for him. But I was like, yeah, that's pretty dope because I think he saw like, okay, Assam and Vega, they need some alone time, so I'm gonna hook him up. I was like, yo, you're a good wingman. You're actually the double wingman because you're like, you let young June have his time. I even love the whole thing of like, oh, you know, it's like, oh, it always comes with a price. But he's like, yeah, but when it comes to love, you always pay a price in some shape or form. It's just a matter of in what capacity. So I thought that was kind of, once again, nice of him just kind of laying back and just letting them both get theirs, you know? So I was like, yo, that's a dope wingman. I hope we get to spend a lot more time with Hong. I hope like nothing happens to Hong because I'm like, yo, I like this guy a lot. Like I said, especially him playing wingman. I figured something had to be up the way, like I said, the whole situation with Vega was she was a little off, and especially when she was paying so much attention to Rooker and his wife that I was like, does she? At first I was wondering if there was kind of a lover situation there where it's like maybe her and Rooker's wife were a thing, but then later on when she's like, oh, I have a sister, I was like, is that who she's going to be? I don't know. I mean, it's like I was like maybe reading too much into it. Well, at least thought I was reading too much into it. I'm like, no, she does mention she has a sister. That's the only family she has left. That's why her and Assam actually have a lot in common. They're both foreigners in a land that, hey, you're supposed to be welcomed in, but you would never fully be welcomed. You can't own any land. You had so much taken from you. Obviously, he came here because of his sister, but it's like, right, that didn't pan out. And for her, she had talked about this borderland being like actually. It used to be part of Mexico, but it's like, right, just because territories get redrawn, it's now a part of California instead of, it's part of the U.S. now instead of being part of Mexico like it originally was. But obviously they were like, giving you breadcrumbs throughout the episode. It wasn't until they actually sat down and had the dinner and she knew so much about the gun. I was like, it's a family heirloom, isn't it? And it is, especially because she's like, yeah, like, and she talks about it. And I was like, and like, they didn't focus on Marisol at all. So I was like, is that not her sister then? Because I was reading this as like, she got close to him just for the sake of like, oh, getting close to him. And Vega needed an opportunity to get close as well. So I was like, right, does he not know they're siblings the moment? Because he didn't recognize Vega. And I'm assuming he didn't recognize Marisol either. But I was like, there's something there. I was like, I guess. And then when she ultimately... especially because it's like, right, Smith ended up dumping out all the bullets, but luckily she had, because they're custom bullets you need for it, and she pulled off the one, and just all she needed was the one, bam, put Rooker down, and so stuff popped off. Obviously, Assam's kind of pissed because it's like, cool, you used me, kind of screwed over to some extent by another person you've slept with, I mean, especially because they had like their back and forth about the whole like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought I thought there was going to kind of be a moment that we're going to have a moment here or something, and it didn't happen the first time, but it did the second time, I'd skipped over it, but the conversation they had was really interesting about, does he plan on going back to China? It's like, there literally is nothing left for him. I mean, his entire family, like, the only person he has left is Mai Ling, and she's here, and all he would have back home are ghosts and regrets because of probably a lot of the stuff he was up to and probably all that he was caught up in everything. It's probably that might be waiting for him in China. Maybe, maybe not. But it's like, even if it wasn't, what's there for you anymore? And, it's like, oh, do you ever think about going back home in Vegas like every day? That's never left her mind. So. But yeah, we find out that this land that Rooker took, this borderline land and everything, he took it from her father forcibly. It's like, right, he murdered their father in front of them. and after making him force him to sign his deed, because who knows how long ago it was for him to not recognize Vega. It's so interesting because he's like, oh, I left my wife for a Mexican. It's like, yeah, but in his mind it's like, right, he probably either they were away and he never like saw them, maybe they were hidden. I don't think Vega didn't really say anything like that, but it might be a thing of it was so long ago that maybe they were teenagers at the time and now they're fully grown women. So he probably immediately didn't recognize Marisol or Vega. I mean, he'd been with Marisol for a while. It's even their anniversary. So they've been planning this for a bit. I'm trying to like get close to him on two different fronts. That would give them the opportunity to strike. Because Marisol needed to marry him so that when he died, everything would go in her name and technically it would all go back to their family. It would be back in their family's hands and stuff. So, but yeah, like I said, like things kind of pop off and they basically have to go toe to toe with the town. Everyone's putting in their work, especially Vega popping off everyone. Shot here, shot there. But yeah, she used all of them, and I was like, wow, we're about to go to Sacramento and get hung, so that sucks. But the way like she had such a like okay demeanor, I was like, are these people on your payroll? Which they are. They're not even real. I was like, because at first, once again, my mind started because I was like, oh, that can't be her sister. I was like, wait, are these people? Are you a marshal or something? Like, how would they legally let you do what you did? But it's like, I guess they were just people hired to play the role of marshals. And then Marisol show up, and it's like, right, this whole thing was their plan. I was like, interesting. But sadly, you know, Vega ends up getting shot. I was like, Jesus, that bastard Smith came through in the end. And it's like, damn it, dude, that sucks. And, you know, because Vega was just asking him, like, right, you don't have to go back. You could stay. Because they ended up giving him the reward money for the tournament. So it all was a net positive. But, you know, Vega lost her life. And it's just like, damn, dude. And for her, it's like, it's all worth it in the end. You know, at least one. Because she's like, if would you have stayed? And he's like, of course I would have stayed. She's like, it's okay. At least one of us could have gotten, you know, one of us gets to go home. And I was like, damn, dude, that sucked. After everything they did, once again, they talk about that, you know, the thing about revenge. You have to dig two graves, one for the person you're after and one for yourself. And sadly, Vega paid the price. Like, this is even more tragic than the, at least episode 5. Everyone walked away okay. Like, at least, like, the main people we got attached to in episode 5 of last season got away. It sucks that it came down to this. Marisol has to carry on that by herself, you know, without her sister. It sucks, but it's like, right, my sister gets to be buried on, I don't know if that still counts as Roker's territory, but I'd like to believe that she got to be buried home, you know, which, you know, it's just sad that things played out like that. It was such a bummer, too. It was like, you would have thought we've got to spend more. Like, even if Vega had stayed around, like, she would have, like, at least we could have run into her in the future or something like that. But it's like, yeah, she was going to probably stay here. Like, we probably would have never saw her again. But, like, knowing she was out there in the world and, you know, living with her sister, everything's hunky-dory, that would have been nice. But it's sad that, you know, this had such a tragic end like this, dude. Such a bummer, like, right there at the end. And Smith, I guess, had his suspicions of Marisol taking off, like, all of a sudden. It's like, your husband was just murdered. Why are you leaving so suddenly? And so he probably followed them, and that's how he overheard everything and found out. I was like, damn, that sucks. It is interesting, though, like, once again, this is kind of this bottle episode as people kind of want to, I hope that's also the thing, like an episode like this, people will write it off, even though there is story progression and smaller story progressions, more character progression. So it'll be seen as a bottle episode, a filler episode, yada, yada, yada. I think it is important things like, just like episode 5, there was stuff that, it brought young June and Assam closer together. It also led him further down his story in season 1. Vega and everything, and her willing to fight for home. Because in her words, it's like, this was more than revenge. This was getting back my home. Because for so long, Assam hasn't really had anything to fight for. Once again, that's why you lost to Leon, because Leon was fighting for something. What were you really fighting for? I think this is going to kind of play a role in his story as they kind of, as he tries to figure out what it is that he's fighting for. I think her determination, her willingness to go so far for her home is just like her dedication and all that. Like I said, this has been a long plan coming. Just like Atoy saw something in him and wanted him to be a part of what she's up to, Vega was kind of in that same boat. So they got the money. They came back to San Francisco, and obviously you could tell, like, it was just kind of like, it's not like that. Even all 3 of them kind of walked back home, like came back home somber after all of that. So I mean, like I said, luckily Marisol, the only person who ever knows the truth is Smith. He's gone. So no one will ever be the wiser about what's going on. So Marisol gets to obviously, but like I said, she doesn't get to enjoy that with her sister. But I think in the end, for it to return to her family's hands, Vega's happy for things that kind of turned out the way they did. So. But when it's all said and done, when they get back home, Father June's there waiting for them. It's like, yo, you got some explaining to do. So, once again, I don't know whether he ended, because my thought was like Hong is like he was sitting there to be an insider, but like maybe not, especially because he went out of his way to be like, yo, I actually figured this all out. I actually want to help you. I'm not trying to get you into trouble. Like I said, we'll see how that plays out. But at least with Father, it makes you wonder how long has he known? Has he picked up on it for a while and just hasn't had an opportunity, like was just waiting to confront them? Or did he just find out? Because obviously the last shipment blew up in their face, so they probably like are behind schedule, and maybe that's how he ended up finding out, like young June was worried about. But young June kind of had this look on his face, like, I don't know. We'll see how that plays out, like him and his dad. Like how he will react to what they ended up doing. Once again, it goes back to what Atoy said. They showed it in a preview of, you're pitting father against son, and you're putting the Tong that is the only Tong that's strong enough to take Mai Ling out, like keep her in check. You're going to like throw that completely off balance. But he kind of made it clear of like he will lead the Tong if he needs to. So, like I said, we will have to wait to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. I'm very excited to see what happens next. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.